and tonight I'm excited to announce and welcome our panel members for this collaborative event, Australia's leading high school strength and conditioning coaches. Before we start tonight's episode, for those new to the podcast, our mission here at 𝗡𝗵𝗴𝗵𝗀𝗆 is to empower aspiring athletes and staff with practical knowledge from some of the industry's most inspiring individuals and to strengthen the AFL community. If you like the show, please show your support by following us on Instagram and subscribing to the podcast. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Our first guest tonight is Nathan Parham, Director of Strength and Conditioning at Brisbane Grammar and author of The Sporting Parent. His topic will be around earning the right versus freedom of choice. So the floor is yours, Nath. Thanks for jumping on again, mate.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jack. Thanks for having it. And yeah, really looking forward to delving into this. So, yeah.
Let's dive straight in. What are some key considerations when working with youth athlete in a school setting?
Yeah, so the whole purpose of it essentially is ensuring that there is choice within their training, as opposed to what we've all been accustomed to in decades of that athletes need to earn the right, so to speak, and a variety of different levels. So but it would assume that they have next to zero, that they can't have a say. And essentially the flaw in that thinking is that we're dealing with a generation of instant gratification through the way they socialize, social media platforms with likes. If they don't get to choose a different platform, even gaming, looking for hacks and things like that. So instant gratification. And the challenge with that lies in that it's, if we earn the right, then they quite simply will just go elsewhere and seek specialization anywhere else if we don't help them or come to us speak. So the freedom of choice is a way that you essentially prescribe to ensure that you get what you want as a coach with those minimum standards or throughout their training and the programming prescription, and that it allows you to get that as an athlete. It allows them some freedom to move, and there's a variety of different ways that you can go, your setting can go about it.
Sure. And is that something you've evolved over your time in working in the school setting?
Yeah, definitely, because I know we've had a few of the other panel members this evening as well, in that they just go elsewhere. Can't give a student exactly what they want at a particular point in time, and then they just go to social gyms and things like that in abundance, and the opportunity and the is so easily available that they can go and just do what they want. I think that I as a coach and we as a program have evolved so that we've ensured that they have that freedom to move and essentially a voice to be heard with their own training ways that we've gone about that.
And how does that look for the strength and conditioning coaches listening in that perhaps are working with the youth in the youth setting? Is it a programming thing where you're educating them on from the programming side of things? Is it sort of within sessions? Talk us through how it looks.
Yeah, so for me, if I rewind several years ago, like I was adamant that a particular way we had to tick all these boxes along the way as well. And I suppose it was in order to reflect as a coach and see how I can pivot and adapt. So what it actually looks like, prioritizing that we need our sessions to be 45 minutes to allow the additional time. So if you think say a 3:30, then that 45 minutes would take them to 4:15, and that for us, our gym is still open for that. So the freedom to move essentially is that for the first half an hour, then or the essentially a program that is provided for them, but then they will have half an hour outside of that to essentially do what they want, whether that be boys being bicep curls and things like that. And that's only one element of it. The other element of it is use the number of sessions that they do in a week so that there can be additional other sessions. So, for example, our program is based off completing 2 sessions a week for our general users. And actually do our job really, really well, that the boys like coming to the gym. They want to come back to the sessions are complete on, whether it be on Monday and a Wednesday, then that allows a Tuesday and to actually do their own program or their own desires, whether it be all legs, all upper body. But at least it allows it. It's a win-win that we have that small priority areas that we target and the number of sessions within a week. And if we do that well, then they'll continue to come back and go elsewhere.
Yeah, fantastic. And what have been some instances where you've been surprised with this philosophy in what athletes are bringing into the gym? Like you mentioned, obviously bicep curls, which is probably no surprise for the listeners, but what have been some things that some methods of training or different exercises that have actually surprised you along the way?
Necessarily been what they've brought in, but I think it's what actually comes of it. So it's independent thinkers. So we have a concept of Brisbane Grammar called effective thinking in cultures, which is very much just their learning, and the idea of that is that even though the irony, even though we've only provided 2 days in a week, for example, then those other 2 sessions 4 times in a week, then you would assume that they're naturally going to want to do their own thing. But what through conversation and learning and the evolution of the athlete is that the students actually acquisitive learners that way, and so they reflect on what they've already done in their previous program to that particular next session, for example, and then also the following program that is prescribed to essentially navigate their way through their own training to ensure that so if a chest day, as an example, for a teenage boy, is that chest day going to have that might involve some upper body pushing movements as well. So it's not necessarily the exercises, but it's more their inquisitive nature, which at the end of the day, working in an educational kind of frame school, then that's essentially what we want. So the biggest byproduct from it is B, a greater knowledge and depth of knowledge from the students at Brisbane Grammar.
And for the coaches supervising those sessions, what are sort of some key areas that you try to bring to that session to help facilitate these sessions?
You mean that they've got the freedom to move, essentially?
Yeah, like I guess, how do you find your place as a coach to intervene, but also give them enough freedom to allow that you're sticking with that philosophy, I guess? Yeah,
so all the coaches are, we've all got a system and a model that's in place, and every different type of programming that's evolved. So our coaching team know what that system is, and so then that way they can actually those discussions or initiate those discussions. Today is a chest day. That's what you want to do. You can do that. So how are you going to do that? Are you going to do? What's the physiological outcome that you're trying to get from this? Are you doing more volume, but you're trying to chase strength? And they're the biggest blocks from it is that actually trying to that all strength training is just not strength training. And you've got hypertrophy, power, strength, and it's allowing them or providing them the opportunity to know what the sets and reps and recovery schemes are for that type of training out effectively, that they get what they want out of it. Yeah, fantastic. And it sounds like from a buy-in perspective, it's been quite effective. What would you say the average student would typically do in terms of frequency of training because they are enjoying coming into the gym? Is it an extra session, 2 sessions? What sort of outcomes are you getting from it? Yeah. So I think the biggest strength of it is that if you have a quantity of 2 sessions that would be expected, is you actually get maximal complete. Doesn't seem like too much of a burden, as opposed to if you're trying to roll out 3 to 4. So that's where students would drift in and out of it. So they know that in order to get that choice, which we're trying to encourage, they know that to get that, they actually have to complete those 2. What it means is we actually get more students students come 3 times a week so they can get that bonus session if they want to do other things. So the compliance of it is, and I suppose the retention, unreal from our perspective. So
Yeah, fantastic. And flipping on the other side, you mentioned the Earn the Right methodology and how it has been quite popular in the school setting. For those listening in that haven't heard that concept, what does earning the right mean in the gym setting, and how does that look?
Yeah, so earning the right, like over the years, you'll just essentially has earned the right for them to be able to choose or have a say in how that they engage in. But in a school setting, for us, one of the things, additional and complementing that with the freedom of choice, is that as they get through into the scene, complete a program essentially provided by us. But part of my portfolio of students is that the second program in each term, so we have 2 4-week measures throughout the term. So on the second one, the key list or the foundation list screen, whereby the students can actually choose. It might just say squat, and then year 12, then they have earned the right in that side of it to have that freedom to choose. They might choose a front squat, they might choose a deep squat versus a shallow. The freedom of choice that also combines with and complements the earning the right.
Yeah, fantastic. So it's a bit of an integration of the two. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
so for those listening in that want to take on this approach of bringing in some freedom of choice within their program, whether it be for youth athletes or just with anyone, what are some important things to take note? I guess maybe mistakes that the team made early on, or just some learnings you've had along the way.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake is, and particularly in the youth setting, is trying to overcomplicate our programming. And when it comes to, say, a squat is simply a squat, and the progression has certain variations of it. And I think as coaches, our biggest win it's particularly in the youth setting, can be the simplicity of programming. So and the students, the youth, can actually see that it's a step-by-step approach, realistic for them. The end point, the end goal is in sight, and it's something that's accomplishable in order for them to continue to progress in their program, because no one wants to be stagnant, creative with exercises and things like that. It might tick that box in, but if we really want to set our students or athletes up for long-term success, then they need to get that compound interest, so to speak, when it comes to their training.
Yeah, I love that. So you're really setting them up for success, for sustainable success, like you mentioned, which is a big part of your role, I imagine, as a strength and conditioning coach working with youth.
Exactly right.
Fantastic, mate. Well, yeah, thanks for coming on and sharing with us the philosophy at Brisbane Grammar. For anything that we didn't cover, or any other mistakes that S&Cs need to be aware of, or potentially athletes, if they're going to start taking on this approach themselves?
I think that the simplicity of the model needs to be just youth setting, as every other panelist here this evening will know, is that the coach to athlete, not what it would be normally discussed and things like that. And it's not uncommon, individual, then the most of it has been myself, to up to 60, 70 athletes once. So you really need to simplify your model, you simplify your system all over, and you don't lose those athletes along the way. So if you keep getting those small wins, and there's that wins, then it's a win-win for the coach who's running the program, and it's a win-win for the students in getting them using them.
Amazing. Well said, mate. And thanks again for opening up tonight. Not an easy position to go first, right? Did well.
No, perfect. Thanks very much, and I really appreciate the invite. And
last one, mate, for those that want to follow your work, where's the best place to get in contact, Nate?
Yeah, I think the easiest one is probably just jump over to Instagram and look up Nathan me a DM, and I'll happy to and fro over it and be of assistance wherever wherever I can.
Yep. We'll add the link in the show notes for those listening in the podcast. Thanks again.
Excellent.
And well, next we have Jared Egan on the show. So we'll welcome him on. His subject is going to be using GPS to improve high school soccer performance. He's head of athletic performance and development at Sydney Grammar School. Welcome, Jared. Thanks for jumping on, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Can you hear me all right, Jared?
Looking forward to it.
Likewise.
Yep, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yep. What are some key considerations when analysing a GPS report?
Well, what is the sport that you're analysing of that sport, and trying to be specific to what's required in that sport and what you need to do to improve it. So that's the first thing I look at. Each sport has its different metrics that we look for, and different benchmarks of those metrics, I suppose. If you then look at a training report or a game report with the next step, we try to, I suppose if it's training, is it the session of the week? We usually have 2 sessions of the week. So first is usually a bit of the second session of the week, which is more match-like and usually involves some sort of either 11v11 type game or similar full-length type of a drill. So the different, and then if it's pre-season, if it's it's probably a similar point, but in a term break, sort of. Hang on a second, guys.
No, right.
Killed me. Excuse me, I'm in the middle of a meeting.
It's a true youth event tonight.
You can't see Mum; she's out the front. Sorry, guys. Oh God. So yeah. Let me get back to it. Yeah, term break or pre-season is pretty much the same situation. We usually use the term breaks to put in another little season, basically, when we in season the volume of training trying to really develop things as we do. Happening here, got a dog barking. The other thing,
right, mate. I've got my dog roaming around in the back end as well.
Taking there, thanks. Wife was looking after the kids and she just had to duck it, so apologies for that. It's all hell's broken loose.
You're right,
anyway, mate. So I look at when it gets down to, I suppose, the metrics that we're looking at. I like to compare a full session game versus a full session averages versus the game demands. They're probably two really important things. In a training session, give me a second. I'm just going to get rid of this dog, and I'll be back, and there won't be any noise. 1 sec. Sorry.
Yeah. I'll open the door just in case my guy wants the same thing.
All right. Apologies. Hopefully,
you're right, mate.
Hopefully we're back.
That was a good opportunity. My dog was barking a little bit before. I don't know if you guys heard.
All right.
Nathan was talking, so open up the back door.
All right.
So yeah, you mentioned.
Yeah. So what I was talking about
comparing
is what they're doing.
Training numbers to game.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things we always try to do in training is to probably train at a higher level than we play at. One of our goals. So we look at the key metrics that we look at a game, and we try and basically at least match them, if not better them in training. Obviously, some of them are difficult to do, like total distance is pretty to do because we just don't have the time in a single to get, like we train. We get there at about 3:30 boys by 5, and by the time they're ready and stuff, we probably get 70 max for a training session, if we're lucky.
Yeah.
Broken up with different breaks. What else do we look at? I suppose we look at the game demand versus drills, as I was talking about then. So some drills may not be at the level we need, and it gives us an opportunity to speak to coaches about improving training. And that's a really important thing we've really started to work on this year. Individual results versus team. So going down to the next level and just going through players individually and if they're matching up, players are dropping off compared to the rest of the team. And then we look at how much dead time there is in training. I think that's really important. We try and eliminate as much time wasted just standing around talking, not doing anything, and really try and make everything as vivid as possible.
Yeah, there's a fair bit to unpack there. Let's start with the training intensity. I think that's a great topic for the listeners. Trying to at least match or go above with your potentially, it sounds like your high speed running and your sprint exposure. Is that ideally done in skilled drills, or how much of it is done with conditioning?
Ideally, I'd like to get most done in footballs, definitely. But there is, especially with something like sprint distance, that's not always the case, or max speed. So we do top them up in those areas particularly. And we probably always try and have a speed emphasis in some of our warm-ups to get that bit may need or may not get from training.
And in season, does that a philosophy just for the main training session, or is it also the session T1? Yes, the first session that the boys do early in the week in terms of matching game demand.
The session earlier in the week is probably the one where we do speed. We usually build that session and a little bit more speed work because we have a little bit extra time there. The session, second session of the week, we really it's really game based training, and we warm them up, get them ready, and pretty much do some sort of small sided game, and then they'll progress into 11v11 or something like that. So the first session we can probably play with things a little bit more, but I have it's something that this year particularly of a lot hard educating our coaches. We can get what we want out of training, and that's been a bit of a process, but I think we're really starting to get there now. And the hard one, I think the hardest one has been meters per minute, and that's probably the key one, to be honest, because you can pretty much get everything else easily. Meters per minute, though, you've really got to push them and get the drills right and make sure that the space that you're using is correct, the number of players is correct, and but I think that's been a key thing we've sort of got on target now.
Yeah, fantastic. Yes, so that's really important from a maintaining fitness point of view, improving match conditioning. Take us through why you value the meters per minute so highly.
Yeah. Like it really for the group that we have, probably as natural athletes, I suppose, as our competitors may have, and I think it's an area where we can easily get a little win, I suppose, and have that. There's really no excuse that I think that for not that metric basically at a high most of the time. I mean, there are some areas where you have to keep it like tactical type work and structural work or whatever, but we've managed to be able to eliminate doing things like reducing time between significantly, and then having some drills that really and blow meters per minute out of the park, I suppose, compared to again.
And you mentioned as well getting the coaches on board.
Yeah, I think why
is that developing an exercise library? Is that how you're working out what certain drills are getting certain metrics? Are you sort of compiling a drill database?
Yeah, we do. We are definitely put together a drill database and trying to get them to understand each of those drills are giving us the results we need, because sometimes they will think that they are getting a lot of something, then they'll drop off the speed metrics or something. You know, they'll think that they're working hard, but they're really not covering much distance. And so it's been a bit of an educational process with them to show them what drills do work. But yeah, rise it and tell them you use these ones as often as you like. These are perfect. Do them every session if you want. So it's that's definitely how we use it, I suppose.
Yep. And what about from a how to use GPS to prevent soft tissue injuries?
Okay. Yep. So I'm dropping in and out a little bit, but one of the things we use with soft tissue injuries, I suppose, paying close attention to max velocity and the number of times you reach 90% of max velocity and 95% of max velocity in a week, and we track that. It's one of the key metrics I look at every week and every training session, and then also we look at the sprint distance that they cover, and they're probably the two key ones. And I found it came from I suppose in the AFL I practiced a lot, and it really made a huge difference to rates there, and it's no different in soccer.
Yeah. And what about for return to play, returning players back to performance? What are some key metrics that you like to look at from a GPS perspective?
Well, they're very similar to what exactly the same as our key metrics for a game match. So meters per minute, run percentage, explosive distance, and HML percentage, so high metabolic load percentage, which is a combination of acceleration and high speed running, and then sprint percentage. So and sprint, other things we use, not so much sprint percentage in rehab, but sprint distance and velocity that they're running per session. So I'll plan a rehab set, say a 3 or 4 week hamstring program. We'll have an end goal as basically being what they get to in a game, and they've got to gradually progress all metrics to be able to hit that target. A few sessions out from play before they return to play and they're cleared. And the other, we use live GPS along while we're doing that, so that we can be right on it during a rehab session and making sure players are running at the speed we want.
Fantastic. And we'll start to wrap it up now, Jared. But we could talk all night on this. But for the strength and conditioning coaches listening in, what are some common mistakes that you have seen, witnessed that developing S&Cs make when first working with GPS?
Yep. You mean?
Yep. I think there's just an internet delay. Not sure why, but there was a bit with Nath as well.
Okay, yep. I reckon one of the things is I suppose focusing on too many metrics in just in your GPS report. Try to keep it simple and too many metrics don't really influence performance, or load if that's what you're focusing on. But I suppose one of the things I've found is that not many people know how to use GPS to influence performance and load more so. And I think it's And it's very useful for managing load and preventing injuries. But I think the performance side of things is sort of underappreciated, and you can really get some good benefits by knowing what things to work there.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for jumping on, Jared. For those that want to follow your work and get in contact, where's the best place to connect online?
Best place to connect, probably LinkedIn, I'd say. Otherwise.
Awesome.
Otherwise, my email address. Happy to email me at the school. It's fine. I can get.
We'll add the.
No problems.
We'll add in the description in the show notes for those listening in. Well, thanks again, Jared, and look forward to if you hang around to a bit of a round table at the end. But otherwise, if you've got to go as well, mate. Thanks for jumping on.
No problems. Thanks very much. Thanks, Jack.
Next, we have Nathan Heaney. He is Head of Athlete Performance and Development at Xavier Grammar. His topic will be GPS utilisation with aspirational junior footballers and its impact on training, planning and periodisation. Welcome, Nate. Thanks for jumping on, mate.
No problems, Jack. Thanks for the invite and thanks for having me.
Let's dive straight into your topic. What are some of your key considerations when dealing with Australian rules footballers from a GPS reporting point of view?
Yeah, no problem. So it's actually obviously timely that I've followed on from Jared. So there's going to be some similarities here because I think we obviously share a pretty similar philosophy on it. But I guess one of the key things for me is ensuring that your GPS metrics are valid and reliable. So based on some of the metrics that Jared alluded to using, he clearly has slightly more sophisticated GPS units than me. So that valid and reliability concept is obviously unit dependent. So there's obviously, I guess, with the advent of less expensive GPS units now, they're I guess more widely accessible across schools. So we have we use a slightly cheaper brand than certainly what would be used at an AFL level, and as such, that has an impact on what metrics we can use. So we tend to stick to duration, distance, work rate, high intensity running, both absolute and relative, and then obviously max speed. So they're kind of our key fundamental metrics that we would use. Another key aspect is making sure that the reporting that you provide, both to coaches and students, and also I guess parents too, they always. I'm very confident that children and kids pass on the GPS data to families. It's making sure that the report is relatable and the athletes actually understand the information. I think that's so critical because there can be a lot of misconceptions that arise off the back of a poor understanding with the GPS data. And then I guess the other thing, and Jared definitely alluded to this, the types of sessions that you're using it with has a massive impact on what the key considerations are. So, for example, if you're providing a report for training versus a game, it's completely different. So the game, you're just describing what's happened, and there's obviously context around results and conditions and opposition, etc. Whereas for training, it's much more about, how do you provide a session that's achieving the theme or the session goal? How does it align with the broader periodization? And also, how does the actual data compare to what was predicted? That's really critical. So that's sort of a really key piece. And I actually had planned some slides to show because I thought it would be easier for people to understand, but obviously we can't do that now. But that's a really key piece. And then phase of the season as well. So that's a really important aspect. So for example, if we're in pre-season, the considerations are entirely different. So the preparation is revolving around how are we preparing students to get ready to play, versus in season, it's more about how we're managing the early phase of the week to facilitate recovery from their biggest stimulus for the week. And then how do we then shift focus on Thursday to try and take a more performance focused approach to training. So it's, in essence, a main training session to optimally prepare them for the game on Saturday. So they're the key considerations. And I guess one thing that I think everyone in this room will probably relate to is all of these school environments have significant constraints associated with them. And like I know, for example, at Xavier College where I work, our pre-season's is entirely completed in the mornings before, so it doesn't conflict with their summer sport commitments. And as such, we're very short on time. We run out of light. So as such, when we actually get into the crux of our pre-season, when we think about trying to meet match demands or prepare them for the imminent game loading, we have to rely on practice games to do that, because there is no way we can get even close through our training sessions. So they're just a few key considerations that I look at.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great response. And from a GPS point of view, how do you use it to periodize a footballer's training program?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And again, data would probably make it a bit easier to describe, but it's very much done in conjunction with the coaching group. So in my role, and working really closely with the First 18 coaching group at Xavier, I'm really lucky that I've got a coaching group that really understands and relates to GPS and its importance. So obviously it's done in conjunction with the coaching group, and it does require quite a few steps. So obviously one of them you've already touched on, and that is formulating a drill database, because essentially without that drill database, one, it's really hard to identify session themes that are important. And then also session themes that sort of are intertwined to the different periodization phases and different types of training sessions. And then the other aspect to that is, how do you then cross-reference your actual sessions that you're completing in relation to what you predicted? And I think that's a really key concept, and that's where you can't do that without having access to a drill database. So that's a really important piece. The other aspect, which is probably really relatable for people given the phase of year that everyone's in, if we focus in on like an in-season phase for GPS utilization, and this is the model I've really successfully implemented at Xavier with the footy program there. If you think about 2 training sessions, which most people have access to, Tuesday and a Thursday, and they play on a Saturday. So unlike an AFL environment, which obviously I was accustomed to before, we have a very set structure. We only have a 7-day turnaround. We train on the same day every week. There's no sliding schedules or anything. So Tuesday for us is a development skills session. So the types of drills that are implemented and used in that session are skill focused. There's not a lot of speed. We really try and focus on providing like an active recovery stimulus to the group. So that's done. If we do that well, the theory is they're going to be optimally recovered from the game, and they're going to be optimally prepared to complete the main training session on the Thursday. And the Thursday is almost like a no holds barred session. There's obviously some constraints around speed and distance and duration, but in terms of drill type, there's drills that sort of center around impact, speed, work rate, and we also tie in our max speed running there too. So again, that's I could speak about this for 90 minutes, but I think the key concept there is just making sure that the periodization is underpinned by the session focus and session goal, and then obviously GPS can absolutely be used to help to facilitate that. Yeah,
and something that's coming through in the last sort of 5 minutes with you're bringing everyone in with the data, not just from the athlete's perspective, but also the coaches with planning of training, and then also parents. That I like that you touched on that. What are some sort of common questions that you find parents that are interested in GPS are asking for potentially parents that are listening in, that are interested maybe to invest in GPS for their child? Maybe their school doesn't go to, or their club doesn't use GPS. Yeah, what are some common questions from parents?
Yeah, I think the big one is, and I think this is probably this refers back to I'm sort of fast forwarding a bit in terms of it's a mistake as well. So one of the biggest issues is parents and students as well. They associate GPS data with performance. Like that could not be further from the truth. So I think one thing we should definitely dispel here is that GPS is not a performance metric. It's simply a byproduct of what's happened in a game or a training session, and it's largely underpinned by your physical quality. So, for example, if you have an athlete that doesn't possess great max speed, well, they're going to find it more challenging to hit a high max speed, and also they're going to be challenged in terms of hitting high absolute and relative high intensity running meters. So I think that is a really key concept, and I try and ingrain that really early with our students and our families, so that they don't think that high is better or more is better when it comes to GPS. And then I guess in terms of one thing we're trying to do at Xavier is almost develop a bit of a progression for our students in our footy program. So we're starting to use GPS on students as young as year 8. So as they sort of come through the Xavier system in terms of our football program, they've had access to GPS all the way through. The parents understand what it's used for. The kids are familiar with it, and also we can start to see, well, hey, here's the demands of the game and training as you come through the system. Ultimately, you have aspirations to play in our first 18 program. Here's what the demands are for that. So when you're coming into year 10, it's really important that we pay careful consideration to certain GPS metrics so that we can better prepare you to come into the pre-season to give yourself the best chance to make the squad. So yeah, there's probably a few more, but they're probably the main ones.
Yeah. Yep. Very good. And then you touched on it for a second there, but what are some common mistakes from strength and conditioning coaches that are utilising GPS as a tool?
Yeah, so I'm glad I've dispelled the first one. So I think that's a really serious issue when people use GPS. So I'm glad we've been able to broach that. Another one that I think happens quite a lot is schools or clubs, when they collect GPS data, they don't actually present it or report it to the students or the athletes. So I think if you're capturing the data on your athletes, like, it's only fair to share it with them. So I think that's really important. And then obviously it ties into one of the initial points I made around making sure the data is both relatable and understandable. So it resonates with the students and they understand why you're capturing the data and what it means for them as well. So how do they get better and how do they improve and what do they need to focus on for subsequent games and training sessions? So I think that's really important. This is probably tied more into training session reporting, not providing context. So I think one thing I'm really big on is when you're providing a training report, and a particular report to coaches where you might be reporting on different training drills and what they elicit, it's providing context. So what was the session goal? What were the session targets? And how does the actual data compare to that? Because that provides you with context. Did the session go for or elicit 1.5K more than you planned? Well, okay, it did, but why? Like, how can you not let that happen again? Or was it a decision you made in consultation with the coaches at the time? I think that stuff's really important. And then so I think they're probably the big ones. Jack, I think they're probably the key mistakes that I see across people that use GPS.
Yeah, it'd be good to unpack it a little bit more with the reflection piece that you've touched on. So for those listening in that perhaps potentially are putting the units on, turning them on, creating a report, and then moving on to the next session, they're not reflecting on that they don't have any targets, and then they're not comparing how far off they are with their targets. When you started doing that or working with coaches that have just started that process, what are some common gaps that you see? Is it generally higher speed running that goes out the window early on when you're new to that concept, or is it speed exposure, accel decels? What are some things that you think you can learn from doing that process?
Yeah, good question. I think one of the major issues I've seen, and this is probably a pretty consistent issue, is coaches always want to do more. So I think for me, I've probably been somewhat of a handbrake, and it's probably not so much in, like, I think sometimes it's session volume and session length that they just want more out of the students, that they're trying to achieve more. But I think the message sometimes is more is not better in the context of the training sessions. And the other aspect is when I think about more and when you think about training intensity, sometimes it's not so much volume that is an issue, it's the type of volume that you're accruing. So for example, our Tuesday session, it might be, I think in some cases it can almost be higher volume than our Thursday, but the session is much less intense. Like the types of drills we use are significantly reduced in intensity. So there's very little change of direction. There's very little high speed running. There's no impact. So by virtue of all of those changes, we can still, complete a 4 or 5K session, but it actually serves an active recovery purpose. So I think that's really, really, really important. And then I think the other one is the only way you can create engagement with the coaches is if you open them up to the conversation. So when you have sessions that haven't necessarily hit the mark, I think what I found a good method I find to try and create the conversation with the coaches is to almost prepare like a training drill report. So essentially every training drill we've completed for the session, I compile a report for that. And that's not for the players. Like sometimes I might pull an example out for the students and athletes, but more often than not, it's for the coaching group. So we can have a look at, well, the session missed the mark, we didn't accrue enough speed. Okay, where did we fall down? So then I can look at what was predicted relative high intensity running for that drill. What did it elicit? Okay, why did we miss the mark? Did we have too many players in the drill? Were we forced to share a ground with another team and we couldn't use enough space? Again, those conversations are created off the back of the report, and then we can sort of address them for a subsequent session. So there's been countless times that the coaching group at Xavier and I have had those discussions, and they've always been really fruitful, and we've had really good positive change off the back of them. So yeah, hopefully that answered some of the queries you had.
Definitely. And the last one on that topic, because I think it's a really important one. With when you start doing that process, do you find that your ability to make decisions on the fly within a session more sound because of the process of reflection?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. So Jared alluded to the fact that they track GPS live. Again, our units have the capacity to do that through an iPhone, but the issue we have with that method is we can't cut any data whilst we're doing it. So there's just like heaps of data creep and it becomes pretty redundant. So we don't track live. And I think to your point, I think it's a combination of knowing the game and then also overlaying that with GPS data. I think that gives you a real capacity to understand and assess drills on the fly. So for example, on a Tuesday night, and again, I'm not saying, trust me, by no means is this system perfect. There's definitely been occasions where, particularly on a Tuesday night, where the drill selection potentially has overshot what I wanted. But I think by and large, what happens there is you can accommodate by changing the Thursday, for example, or you can discuss it with the coaches. But for example, it might be on a Tuesday night, there might be a drill that has too much high speed running. So it's too expansive and there's too much pressure in it. So then by virtue of doing that, the students, immediately lift their intensity because they feel like they're going to get tackled by someone or they're getting pressured. So those types of things you can pick up on the fly. And I think it's once you see the impact of those types of changes to training in the GPS data, it then just adds credence to I guess the eye test. You start to see those things unfold, and you can sometimes you can intervene live. Other times you've got to wait retrospectively to assess the damage, and then you can sort of report on it and then have a conversation around it.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, thanks so much for jumping on and sharing with us how you apply GPS in a football program. For those that want to connect with you, mate, you're also the founder of Conditioning Consultant. Do you want to give us a little plug there on what Conditioning Consultant does for S&Cs as well as athletes? And then where can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, thanks, Jake. So yeah, probably the easiest way is through the Instagram handle at the Conditioning Consultant. And I guess it was sort of it was set up a couple of years ago to provide better education and information around a topic that I think is sometimes misunderstood by a lot of people. So I happen to do a lot of lecturing through the ACA, and most people's strength training knowledge sits up here and conditioning sits down here. So it's trying to bridge the gap a little bit and provide whether it be athletes or aspirational S&C coaches and sports scientists with just a platform to learn a bit more about conditioning application. So whether that's GPS utilization or interval application or a better understanding of some of the underpinning physiology, that's kind of been the focus. So yeah, thanks.
Awesome. No, thank you. And yeah, thanks again for sharing your time. For those that want to get in contact, we'll add the links in the show notes, guys, so you can check out the Conditioning Consultant and Heaney's work there. Thanks again, Nath.
No worries, mate. Thank you.
Next on the show, we have Dave Kennett, Head of Athletic Development at Shaw School. His topic will be building an athlete development team at a school. Welcome, Dave. Thanks for jumping on, mate.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me, mate.
You're waiting halfway through the rank. I'm wondering how yourself, Soph, Adam, Valerie, how you guys are going. Tom, you're still with us. Plenty of energy in the face. So
yeah, we're good. We're good.
yeah, maybe we should get a game
I'll try
going
not to
out of
put you guys to sleep.
We'll jump straight in. We're not going too bad for time. I think I'm only 15 minutes over, so we'll get there. What are some key considerations when working with a youth athlete in a school setting, mate?
Well, for me, I think it's all about the environment you create and how you engage with, your student athletes, and you're basically trying to foster an environment in which they want to come to and they enjoy coming to, and then off the back of that, you get to get the physiological and psychological sort of outcomes that everyone's after from their training. I think that's really the key for mine, and that's what I try to create at our school and within our team.
And how would the school setting sort of differ to a sporting club with the same sort of age group, like your under 16s at the local footy club or under 18s?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question. I think it comes down to, when you're training athletes in a school setting, it's very often not just one particular sport in which you're focusing on. For example, many of the athletes that, we work with, will be rowers in the summer, and then there'll be rugby players in the winter, or there'll be basketballers, and then there'll be footballers and so on. So I think, having a lens a 365-day sort of lens across that is quite important. And that definitely differs from, just your footy club where you're just focusing on one particular sport and the attributes that are important for that. I also think that what's very different about a school setting is that, and everyone, on the panel will have experienced this, often you work with an individual in year 7 and then it's all the way through to year 12. So your actual time of engagement with that particular person and your ability to, create rapport with them, to get to know them and their family and their background and so on. And then also, make significant impact on their, not only their sort of physical attributes, but also, them as a person is, really rewarding. And I think that's a very profound kind of thing. So I think that's one of the key sort of differences, although I know that can happen at clubs, but, it's very much a part of being a S&C or athletic development coach within a school setting. And then I suppose depending on what sort of club lens you're kind of looking at, if you're looking at the sort of more professional type top end club level, and then you're comparing that to a school, well, as Nathan sort of suggested earlier, it should, in my opinion, be very much about like long-term athlete development and looking at the big picture rather than, and with that, I'm saying their academics and their personal life and all that sort of thing, and not just simply, wins and losses that might be more or less the focus, in your average NRL club or AFL club. And they're for mine the key differences.
Yeah, and how do you go about I guess managing that where you are really dealing with the whole person, and then while you're also trying to teach them and educate them strength conditioning?
Yeah, well, and that's one of the big challenges, I think. I mean, we all know on the panel that managing workloads from their sport, their S&C work, their academia, their just outside sort of life is quite difficult. And I think that comes down to just trying to open up clear communication pathways with not only the students, but also their families and their housemasters and their sort of carers within the school. Because, we all know it, sometimes it's just crazy how much these kids do. And, that they'll leave, that they might have a gym session with me in the morning, then they've got school all day, then they've got a pretty heavy field session in the afternoon, and then you find out they're going to rugby league training in the night as well. And then you know, like it's a huge day no matter who you are. So, you know, that kind of thing, and speaking to their parents and speaking to them and getting a, you know, good understanding of all those kinds of things is very important, not only for their athletic sort of development, but, you know, also just their personal well-being, I think. And then look, in terms of, I suppose, just fostering that kind of character development and things, I suppose it just comes down to, you know, how you interact with them and how your team interact with them on a personal level, and, you know, just trying to be a good person to them and respectful to them, and hopefully that rubs off a little bit on them and they like that in you, and maybe sort of try to do a similar thing. I think that's how I tend to go about it, rather than kind of going, oh, you know, you've got to have good manners, this and this. I think, you know, you just try to do it yourself, and hopefully, you know, it catches on. I don't know if I've really mastered it, but I try.
Yeah. And take us through, what does the department look like at Shaw School? So you've got yourself at the head of the department, but what have you got support around you, or take us through?
Yeah, well, I've been there, you know, like as a part of this panel, we've been termed leading strength and conditioning coaches in Australia, but I think for me, it's more I've just been here the longest, because I've actually been at Shaw for 11 years. So, you know, I've really become a bit of a part of the furniture. But so it started just with me solely, and then from there, you know, I was lucky enough to get another full-time S&C coach who works alongside me, and then we've got generally about 4 casual staff who work anywhere between sort of 10 to 16 hours a week. And then often through the University of Technology, Sydney, we will have, you know, a student doing their professional internship with us, maybe 2 at a time. So yeah, we're as far as schools go in Australia, I think we're pretty, we're very lucky in terms of the investment that the schools put into our program and into the boys.
And you touched on some challenges earlier, but what are some key challenges and constraints that are front of mind when you're a strength and conditioning coach working in a school setting?
Yeah, I sort of touched on it a little bit before, and I'm sure it's a similar experience to the other panelists, but I think the conflict between sports and how they tend to overlap is quite a big one and managing those loads. For example, you know, your top basketballers will be playing through that season ends, and then the next week they're supposed to be playing, you know, rugby against another school. And so, you know, managing that athlete in terms of, you know, not only their, I guess, physiological workloads, but also, you know, giving them a bit of a mental break, as well as then getting them prepared for things like, you know, heavy contact, which is a, you know, big part of rugby, for example, you know, in order to prevent or reduce the risk of injury, you know, is really, that's quite a big challenge. And, you know, it doesn't just come down to S&C or athletic development. It's got to be very much a sort of multifaceted communication decision type model, I think. And I think we're getting better at doing that, definitely better than a few years ago. Then I think also, you know, early specialization is quite a thing that is a challenge at schools, and increasingly so. I think, you know, over the years, I've seen more and more student athletes earlier on just specialize in the one sport. For example, basketball or rugby, there might have been 1 or 2 each year, you know, from about, you know, 8 or 9 or year 10. But now I'm seeing, you know, multiple in each year wanting to do it. And, you know, like all the research points to the fact that that's, you know, not the best model for them. You know, I certainly do understand it when you get into, say, year 11 and 12 where they're 17, 18. But, I think that's a big challenge, and that's again, not just down to the athletic development staff. It's very much down to the whole sporting staff and parents and so on, being quite educated in regards to that, and it's a difficult one for sure.
Yeah. What's sort of your take on that? What, you've got the finger on the pulse, I guess you're seeing it. Why do you think there's a trend in that space? Where's the motive coming from, do you think?
I think it comes down to being able to, like there's more academies and there's more sort of semi-professional sport, the under 16 level, from what I'm seeing, from in New South Wales, rugby league, rugby union, basketball academies, all that kind of stuff. And you put yourself in their shoes. You're a good rugby league player, for example. You're getting contracts early on, although they might not be worth much in terms of a monetary sense, but it's got the logo on it. You sign, you're committed, and then you're basically dragged along by the bright lights of making it to the NRL one day. And I can see why you put all your eggs in one basket, and you might not go and play basketball in the summer, for example, with your mates. You'll sort of train all year round. But more and more I'm seeing, with the rugby codes in particular, that you could be playing, rugby union or winter, and then there's some academy stuff, and then it goes over the summer into the rugby league programs, and then there'll be 2 weeks off, and then it's all back on again, another cycle of that. So effectively they're playing contact sport at a high level for, you'd nearly say, 42 weeks of the year, and that's not including training sessions where there's high contact. So, it's a bit of a sink or swim sort of environment when it's at that kind of level, in my opinion. So it's very different to when I grew up, where you'd have distinct seasons, and I don't know where that exactly leads us as a sort of sporting nation, but it's interesting, I suppose. Who knows? Yeah.
Well, at least we've got people like yourself in there helping them along the way and supporting them. So thanks so much for jumping on, Dave, and sharing with us your experience over a decade at Shaw School. For those that want to get in contact with you, mate, where's the best place?
Look, Instagram, as Nate said, DMs or on LinkedIn or something like that. I'm on Instagram, on LinkedIn, that'd work fine, and happy to have a chat to anyone. So thanks for having me on, Jack.
Thanks for jumping on, Dave.
All right, cheers.
Next, we have Sophie Pitcock, Performance Development and Injury Rehabilitation Specialist at Brisbane Grammar School. Her topic will be the importance of injury management coached within a high school strength and conditioning department. Welcome, Soph. Thanks for jumping on.
Hi, Jack. No worries.
We'll go straight into it. What are some of the key considerations when working with an athlete who's injured?
Yeah, no worries. So I think important things to consider is that boys playing sport and through the highs of winning, losing with their mates is actually entity. So then all of a sudden that's ripped away from them, we keep them engaged. As S&C coaches, full season plans and plan A, but what's our plan B? Have to what that plan is. So the way I like to work is a place, not remove, or the boy from their training. So working out how we can best integrate them within their S&C, considering their what's the best way to keep them as involved as possible with their team, so they're involved and engaged in their sport and their program. And I think it's also important boys as well, boys working with injury and what where they've come from to get to this. There was anything that we could have done different, and then also educate to what the plan is now. So I think it's to know the plan for them is just they're a little bit more on board with. I think those would be some of the main things there.
Yeah, sure. And you mentioned how challenging it can be when they're, I guess, isolated from the group during an injury. Obviously, they want to be playing sport. Early on in the rehabilitation process, how do you, I guess, educate the athlete of the importance of trusting the process and your guidance in that?
Comes pretty quickly normally, so it can be a little bit tricky to get them to hook them initially. And if you've got a plan and a process and the kids can actually see that, they're much more willing to buy into what agenda is for them, that they understand that you're not ruling them out. I am back into your sport and back out sport as soon as possible. That's what. And so then I think once that you've actually got the same end goal as, then they're a lot more likely to buy into what you're trying to do with them.
Yeah. And is that something that you've faced over your time in that rehab space for those interested in getting in the rehab space or currently are in it? Is that the challenge that potentially younger athletes can perceive you as working against them because you're pulling them out of certain things, and whereas actually you need to be a team and work together to get to the end result, like you mentioned? Yeah,
definitely. A lot of the time, players can, they feel literally they think that you're there to pull them out, and then it comes down to know that we're actually literally a team, and so that back out onto the field as soon as possible.
Yeah, and rehab coaches might not be in all schools. Why do you think it's important for those that maybe do have a strength and conditioning coach, and maybe they're starting to develop a team to incorporate someone with the responsibility of rehabilitation return to play?
I think we're really lucky actually to have the setup that we do from our team to have mine here at Grammar, and it's really important to have to close the loop, but everyone that's involved with an injured kid, and so that goes all the physio or other various special through to parents, teachers, and then we also have layer to that of so we've got boarding consideration. So having someone one-stop shop to information and then disperse it to go, I think is really important. It makes or it enables that we're going through the cracks, and so we can get injuries right away rather than months later finding out about in rehab much sooner than they have.
Yeah. And have you seen any change in injuries in the school setting since the pandemic?
Not really, to be honest. At the time, so in Queensland, we haven't as impacted as other states. Pandemic, we had about a 6-week lockdown about 2 years ago, and main ones. Since then, we've only more ones here and there. So in that sense, and then it has always been focused to lockdown to really ensure that we can prescribe out as best we can with all of constraints, or again as best we can our risk of injuries. So yeah, that's probably a Queenslander because we've been very lucky.
Yeah, and as the rehab specialist at the school, how does your role look? Are you set at certain sports and focus on that sport, or are you more broad across all the sports, and if anyone's injured, they go see Soph?
Yeah, so I'm actually at sports from year 9 to 12. How that looks is our role is also new. It's only in its second term, specific role, so kind of educating that still needs to happen in terms of, as I said before, which is students and parents. I am actually here at the school support person for injury. I'm still working to get the word out, and so with that comes relationships with all of our local physio that they know that I'm working closely with those physio, and I think my role is actually be well known. I've been very busy, particularly the fact that we're in rugby season, but finally coaches forward through emails from kids rather than kids just ruling themselves out. So that's a pretty cool avenue, and then also structured then is on our afternoons I'm role for rehab sessions, so essentially book kids in dependent on their other requirements, extracurricular activity, because I think the key things is just making sure they're doing it, having them locked in twice a week with me, 2 decent rehab sessions in.
And for those listening in, strength and conditioning coaches, what are some challenges and constraints in the school setting when you're working in the rehab space?
So the kids have so many activities. They've got school, they've got music, they've got sport. So finding times and some sessions with one of the trickiest things. Another challenge is at both ends of the spectrum. So you've got kids sort of won't do enough, or it's half, and then you've got the kids that are doing too. Trying to rein those doing too much, and then also trying that aren't doing enough, getting them a little bit more engaged in what they need to, can also. And then particularly times of the year, so as I say, busy with rugby season, got a lot of injuries to deal with on my books at the moment across ages, so from year 9 all new kids. So sure that I've got systems and pros to make my job easier, so that I've not got return to play protocols ready, just print, bang, here you go, little rehab card, generic, or the injuries that general calf or just got little programs laminated, so I can just set it out to the kids. So just having in place for those busy periods as well. Yeah,
it sounds like it's handy to be organised in your role.
Yeah,
that's fair to say.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sophie, for coming on and jumping on the show and talking us through your role. It is quite a unique one, I can imagine, in the school setting, but probably one that's growing, and awesome to hear that the work that you're doing at Brisbane Grammar. I know Nathan Parham recommended you really highly, and so you must be doing great things. For those that want to get in contact with yourself, Sophie, where's the best place?
Just the usual. LinkedIn will be the way to go. So anyone get me up there and I'll respond.
Very good. Awesome. Yeah, we'll add the link in the show notes. Thanks again, Soph.
Thanks for having me.
Next, we have Adam Earnshaw, Gym Strength and Conditioning Coordinator at Camberwell Grammar School. His topic will be enhancing learning and engagement through play. Give us a game, Adam. What are we doing?
Oh, we're going to play something now. We can do that if you want.
No, I'm joking.
Thanks for having me. The future of S&C is looking bright with all these coaches in the high school sector. So
I know, we're coming for America by the looks of it.
I know, right?
let's get into it. How do you incorporate play in your session planning, mate? Take us through it.
Mate, first of all, I got to give a little bit of a backstory, and I promised I would give him a shout out. So this is shout out to Paul Sartori, because he told me he'd be watching this instead of the Commonwealth Games. So he
Wow.
We've been in this. We're in the early stages of the school investing quite strongly into S&C. Like Dave mentioned, that their school, they've put a lot of time and effort into it, and they've done that here. So Paul has been heading up the program. We've built this from scratch from the last 4.5 years alongside with some amazing coaches. And as part of our early discussions, we both believe that play is such an important part to learning, and we wanted a program that is structured but also fun and engaging. And I think that was the big issue that we saw was, and I wish Nathan was here, because he was kind of talking something about this, about earning the right and giving kids freedom and that sort of thing. So we were looking at how can we provide structure while also keeping it engaging and fun and bringing the energy to these sessions and keep the kids coming back. So how we incorporate it is pretty simply in our warm-ups. And we do a variety of things. We do different games, setting up obstacle courses, different challenges, keeping things competitive, sometimes getting the gym mats out, the crash mats out, playing around, rolling around, that kind of stuff. And just getting the students involved, getting them fired up and ready to go. We all know that working in the high school setting, that kids come in flat, they come in tired. We talked about the strains they have from different trainings and all that sort of thing. So it's not always easy getting those sessions started, but adding this element into it is an easy way to get kids fired up and then still have the time to do all the other things that you need to do. And I'd rather just bring some energy to a session than just to go through the motions over and over again. So this is with I predominantly work with some of the younger kids in the years 7 and 8, but this is for every kid. This is for our first footy team as well, adding that in. Maybe there's a little bit more with those year 7 and 8 students, but it's for everyone. And if you've seen them do this in the pro setting too, with different games and that, people get just as involved and just as competitive, no matter how old you are. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, on that, what are your favourite games? What top 5, mate, that get the best effect? Yeah.
There are so many games, and I'm going to shout out. I'll do a few, but shout out to Athletes Authority. If anyone is on the social media game, you must have seen the cone reaction game about 100 times, and it must be the most well-used game. And I'm sure we've all done it in the S&C industry, especially in the high school setting. Well, in any setting really. Just an easy and fun way to do it, and then you can manipulate the game as you need and as they do, with adding tennis balls in, adding some jumping variations to it and that kind of thing. Couple others we like to use is any sort of reaction game. So I won't go too much into the details, but for anyone out there holding different tennis balls and then someone having the hands either behind the back or in different positions catching the ball, and then you can add variety to that as much as possible. And the same with another one, we do a noughts and crosses, tic-tac-toe. Our version is using cones and the spiky massage balls that we have around, which tend to work well. And then varying the games up as much as possible. So as an example, you can manipulate that. I know it's a simple game, but you can manipulate it in any way you want. So making the game bigger, making the game smaller, that kind of thing, adding different elements to it. But within that game itself, you're doing some acceleration, some deceleration, some change of direction without the kids really knowing what's going on. So you can adapt that to depending on what session you're doing even. So there's many ways you can be as creative as possible. And if you really want to get creative, what we do quite a bit, is setting up different courses, that kind of thing, setting up jump courses, agility courses, obstacle courses, and just adding all these different elements into it so that the kids are getting variety. And same thing, you can make it as long as short as you want. You can make the hurdles higher, you can crawl, you can do whatever it's needed to get them going at the start of a session.
So it's almost like a Ninja Warrior theme.
I mean, we don't have what Brighton Grammar have, but they have their full Ninja Warrior course, which would be the dream. But We can
do they?
set up pretty
Wow.
close. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, you guys need to check that out for sure. If any coaches out there, it's amazing.
Right. And the tennis ball game, like the reactive side of things, how do you, like you mentioned the energy that comes with the accelerations for the noughts and crosses, because I imagine it gets competitive.
Yeah.
How do you add some engagement when they are coming in a bit flat? I imagine if a coach has never done that before and they get him doing the tennis balls, potentially it can go the other way where it doesn't quite get the engagement. So what are some tips and tricks that you give to make sure that the players do spark up and bring some energy to a game like that?
I think first of all, you have to bring your own energy. I always like to think you have to be the energy in the room sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes you have to be the energy. But adding a competitive element is probably the easiest way to get any of these kids fired up, especially the athletes. So adding that sort of stuff into it. And then you could, like I said, you can vary up the games as much as possible to make it like a challenge, so that if you're dropping the ball from a certain distance and you have to back up a little bit and you're catching it before the second bounce. So you're imagining it's almost like a tennis player playing a drop shot, like reaching in to grab something, that kind of thing. So you're just training another element there. So yeah,
and
you can do whatever you want.
I love it, mate. Be the energy and add a bit of competitiveness. That's well said. With the key areas from in the gym strength and conditioning point of view, what are some of your big rocks that once the game's done and you've got the energy and the vibes up, what are some of your key focuses when they're now getting to work?
Oh, you mean after the games or?
Yeah, after the games.
Oh, the same as like what they are in the games, which is to have fun, to explore, to compete, to make mistakes, which you're doing this all in the game, and you're setting up that mentality when they go do other things. Like, yes, we want to get the movements like down. We want to get technique correct, but it's okay to make mistakes. And it's the same is going to happen in these games, right? We want to, and in such an environment like a school where often these kids are quite scared to make mistakes, especially if you're in quite a strong academic school where one mistake can make such a big difference in your score at the end of the year. These kids are worried about making mistakes or taking risks, and in a safe environment where you're playing games and you're allowing them to do that in their warm-ups, then they feel confident and they can, do things by themselves a little bit more, and they don't have to be constantly looked after by a coach. And so that's something that we can pass on through the games then into their sessions.
Yeah, that's really good, mate. It sounds like you're empowering the kids, not only physically, but also just their confidence levels and their overall well-being. You mentioned Paul earlier. At what point did you guys come up with this thinking and started implementing this? How did it come about?
I think this was just our general conversations. These are the things you have to do when you're starting, when you're really starting a program from scratch, really, is have these conversations about what you're looking like, what you want the program to look like moving forward, what the vision of the program was. And our vision of the program was we want a space where kids want to come. They feel safe. They feel like they can make mistakes. They can explore. We give them that freedom of choice, like Nathan talked about. We allow them to be creative, and these were all things we wanted. And if we were going to do that, then we want to provide stuff like that in our warm-ups and through our sessions, as well as providing solid strength and conditioning training for the boys as well.
And early on, what were some mistakes that you guys made when implementing this? I imagine it didn't go 100% right. There must have been a learning curve early on with anything new. So for those listening in that are going to take on this philosophy, what are some teachings that you can provide?
Absolutely. There's always mistakes. It's like controlled chaos sometimes, but that's fine. I think, like I said about we're trying to teach the kids to make mistakes, I think we have to be okay to make mistakes. And just like I teach the kids to be creative and think outside the box, sometimes you have to be okay with doing the same. Definitely take it too far on one side. If the session is becoming like, then it's all play and nothing else, and it can get a little bit out of hand. So you need to still set boundaries and set standards in the gym and make sure you're following those. But it's just trying to find that balance of structure, and then also allowing them to play and explore at the same time. So you have to find the right balance for yourself and ensure that you have boundaries and the standards in the gym and what you expect from the students as well. So if you set that from early on, I feel like that really helps you along the way.
Yep. And when you're going in that creative mode, is it all staff that are bringing new games to the table, and that's how you're sort of developing your database?
No, the secret is to use the kids, Jack. The kids have the creative minds. That's where it comes from. But it is bouncing ideas off staff. Obviously, it's not just the kids running the show, but it is about we do have these conversations, and we've had these conversations recently about like, okay, how can we implement this? How can we make this a little bit more engaging, and how we're coaching things. So these conversations are important, but then also take feedback from your students, allow them to, like you're trying to teach them, be creative and give you their ideas as well. And you're not going to run with all their ideas that they're putting out there, but if the same feedback's coming back, then you have to be open to listen to these guys and give them that freedom and give them the chance to try something out, and it might not work, but you have to be open to that as well.
Very well said, mate. Thank you so much for jumping on and sharing with us your experiences with this philosophy of bringing in play in what can be a serious environment at times, and ultimately, like you said, if the kids are having fun along the way, then they're going to learn and enjoy themselves and keep coming back. For those that want to get in contact with yourself, mate, where's the best place to connect?
Just reach out. Instagram's probably the best one. Just coach_Earnshaw. And then the kids keep telling me I should get TikToks, and maybe I'll be able to put that at the end.
I was wondering if someone was going to do the TikTok.
Maybe sometime soon, but I'll hold off for now. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, I've taken the plunge. I'm still trying to work it out though. But...
I'll get some.
Very good. Thanks, mate. Next on the show, we have Valerie Stromadov. He's the head strength and conditioning at Bendigo East High School. His topic will be the exercise progression in Bendigo education plan and athlete development program. Welcome, Valerie. Thanks for jumping on, mate.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
It wasn't too long ago since we were doing our one-on-one.
Yeah.
We're back into it, and I've had a few coaches reach out and specifically that have listened to your podcast episode around the Bendigo strength and conditioning philosophy. For those that haven't listened to that episode yet, do you want to just touch on what it's all about?
Well, the program I work in is part of Bendigo Education Plan, which is the local Department of Education. And the program is Select Entry Sports Program. We work with 250 student athletes from year 7 to year 12. So the students, they apply for the program and then get selected. And they do 2 strength and conditioning sessions in school hours. And the foundation of our general physical preparation is athletic training and sports training and strength training. The athletic training is based on running drills and plyometrics. The running drills are great for developing the running technique, conditioning the running muscles, coordination, dynamic stability, Rehab and rehabilitation. Some of the drills we use can correct running asymmetry and imbalances in ground contact time. The students start to practice the running drills from year 7, and they'll learn them walking, and gradually we introduce more speed and advanced drills. Year 9, 10, and 11 and 12 are obviously more experience, and they practice the running drills with higher cadence and shorter ground contact. During year 10, 11, and 12, we practice some of the drills with additional weight for resistance, what we do, some depending on the drills, some of the drills we hold light plate overhead, depending on the, I would say, on the ground contact. We hold plate over the head or plate in front. We don't go heavy. The strongest athletes perform the drills with no heavier than 5 kilograms. And we do 2 sessions per week. And the way we structure our training sessions is warm up. We warm up with mobility drills, and after the warm up we do 15 minutes running drills, and then the weights follow the running drills.
Yeah, and on the running drills that you talked about, how you're improving, their movement, ground contact time, coordination. Running is a complex movement, and it does require a lot of coaching. How do you break down the athletes when you've got a big group? For those coaches listening that are wanting to develop this area, what are some of your favorite ways to teach young athletes?
Well, I mean, from my experience with young athletes, I find that the best way to develop technique is through running drills, because the very nature of the running drill is, let's say, the whole running cycle is broken down on small segments. Mm-hmm. And when you use running drills, actually you work on the running technique. It happens automatically. And look, I mean, our students, our classes are based on years. So in one training session, we have only year 7 students, then the next sessions year 8, then year 9 and 10. So obviously they're on similar level, technical level, and but I find that through running drills we develop the running technique.
Yeah, transfers over.
Did I understand the question properly? Did I answer the question?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah. So because of that consistency of the 2 15-minute blocks and doing it over repetition over short distances, you're actually being able to transfer into their running development.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What happens is the running drills are in every training session, and it's only 15 minutes, but over time accumulates. And how to say, when students start year 7, it's scary. What I mean, running's supposed to be a natural, but it's not. And then year 8, when you watch year 8, they look completely different. Year 9 are even more advanced. Even 10 are, run better than us, Jack. It accumulates over the time.
Yeah. One of the coaches that was impressed with your philosophy was John Pryor. I actually had him a couple of days after interviewing yourself, and he's one of the leading coaches with 𝗏𝗏 methodology. So I'm sure you're aware of 𝗏𝗏's work, and even you mentioned he's made quite famous at the moment. It's on trend with using plates and doing switching and running drills. With your experience growing up in Bulgaria and being developed as a handball player and then working in the industry for a good period of time, why do you think it's become so popular now, the 𝗏𝗏 methodology?
Well, I think because I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I've been coaching for 35 years, and I've been observing how every 10 years, our, how to say, young athletes are becoming, how to say, more, less coordinated. And we have to teach them, how to run. In fact, actually, before you start to teach them how to run, we teach them how to walk properly. And I think this is because of our lifestyle. Our lifestyle has changed a lot in the last 40 years. We are more sedentary, we move less, and we just lose our natural ability to run and move properly, jump and land. Used to be easier to coach young athletes how to run, jump, and squat. Now becomes now it's time consuming and energy consuming. And I think the reason is because we lost our, how to say, active lifestyle. And I think this is one of the reasons all these systems are becoming popular, because if athletes want to play elite sport, well, they have to learn how to move properly. Lifestyle is not excuse. When clubs select kids, young athletes, well, they're still looking for strong and athletic and fast athletes.
Absolutely. Now, well said. And that makes a lot of sense why you start with mobility and running coordination drills.
Yeah. Well, trying to adapt to the time.
Yeah.
To what happens actually to our lifestyle. Now, now the next part of our general physical preparation is strength training. Now, during years 7 and 8, mobility, flexibility, static and dynamic stability are priority in our program. So before we start to learn how to squat, we develop some, sufficient mobility and stability. Then during year 7, our students learn step up, body weight squat, goblet squat, bent and straight leg deadlifts, then upper body pushing. We teach them how to do bench press with dumbbells, neutral grip, just up and down, simple. Bench rowing, face down, again pulling neutral grip, and shoulder press, standing shoulder press with very light dumbbells. Year 9 students learn front squat, split squat, then we progress to Bulgarian squat. Now, Bulgarian squat, we do slightly different. The rear foot is just slightly elevated, probably 1 plate height, no more. No
20 kilo plate.
Yeah, just the height. The rear foot is placed on, small, not on bench, because it's just too hard. And just small, and which works well for young kids. And they learn lunges, variety, different side, lateral lunges, front, stepping back, walking lunges. Then we move to a little bit more, let's say, Olympic lifts. We start with hang clean pull. Hang clean, and of course, we start with 10 kilograms bar. We have 8 and 10 kilograms bars from just above the knees. Then from there we progress to clean pulls from the floor. and then hang power clean. The front squat in the Olympic lifts we introduced during the second semester, term 3, at the start of term 3, year 8, upper body pushing, bench press. We introduced barbell. It's not my favorite exercise, but a workout that's better for the kids to learn how to do bench press in our program than from YouTube. And again, then pulling exercise, we introduce bent over rowing, dumbbells and barbell. Again, the weight's very light. And standing shoulder press with barbell, with bar. Again, we start with 8 kilograms bar. It's more, everything is movement based. The resistance is, and I find that actually they get strong, the young athletes get strong, not from the weight, but from learning how to do the exercises properly, from proper technique initially. Then year 9, we continue with front squat. Halfway through year 9, we introduce back squat. And we continue with the clean pulls from year 8. And the second semester, we introduce power clean from the floor. Again, the weight, it's a movement base. They're not allowed to lift heavy. And they understand, our kids are well educated, and they understand the reason. The reasons. Year 10 is interesting year. We introduce only 2 new exercises, push press and overhead squat. Again, overhead squat, we start with broomstick and progress to, bar. Again, movement is, focus on movement. And during the year, we refined the exercises we learned during the previous 3 years. We refined the technique. We focus on
all the movements have been brought in.
Previous exercise, but particularly on front squat, back squat, single leg squat as well. On box, they sit on box or bench. Clean pull, power clean from the floor. Basically, during year 10, we master all these year lifts, master the technique. During year 11 and 12, the training intensity increases, but the good lifting technique and the slightly heavier weights and high barbell velocity helps them develop strength and power. During year 10, we introduce some more advanced exercises. When I say more advanced, we combine, I'll give you an example with power clean from the floor. We'll do 3 power cleans from the floor, and then then after the 3rd power clean, we'll do 3 front squats in 1 set. Can you send 3 power cleans, catch the 3rd repetition, and 3 squats? Example, 3 reps cleans and 3 reps squats. Another exercise is hang power cleans with push press or push jerk. Obviously involves more coordination and the heart rate goes a little bit higher. Again, we follow the rule. If you can't control the weight, the barbell, the weight's too heavy and it's not for us. So we go as heavy as you can control the weight. If the set looks ugly, we reduce the weight. We drop the weight. Well,
Bessie Hayes has just written in a question for you, Valerie. Someone's written in, I would be interested to know if Valerie has seen a change in kids being more scared to try because they've seen more perfect on various platforms and they don't want to be bad or be a true beginner, sort of like what Adam was touching on before, potentially being nervous of making mistakes. Is that something that you're finding you're dealing with in the weights room more recently?
Not at all. No, our kids, I mean, they understand it's educational program and they learn coaching cues and they understand very well that making mistake is part of the process. So and the way we introduce actually the way we introduce the exercises, they prepare. So before they start to do power cleans, we prepare them with pulls. So the progression goes from simple to more advanced, and and reduces the risk. Well, this is the reason. One of the reasons actually I'm presenting this. The exercise selections reduces the stress on the kids. So, but they're not. They know very well that they can make mistakes. It's part of the learning. They're not allowed to go heavy to increase the weight without consulting with the coaching, without asking the coaching staff. This is the only rule, serious rule we have in the gym. No heavy weights without asking. So our strength and conditioning program is a long-term development program, and good lifting technique is always priority, as I said, but we don't increase the weight, or we don't do more advanced exercise if you haven't mastered the basics. So
very good. We'll have to wrap it up there, Valerie. We could otherwise we'll never get Tom on. But thank you so much for taking us through the phase by phase approach that you've got at Bendigo, and no doubt the kids there are very lucky to be under your coaching eyes. For those that want to get in contact with yourself, mate, where's the best place to connect with you online?
Well, I don't check regularly my Instagram, but probably LinkedIn or Facebook. LinkedIn is probably the most.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we'll add the link in the show notes. Thanks again, Valerie, for jumping on.
Thanks.
Next, and our final guest for the show tonight is Tom Van Kelgen. He's head strength and conditioning coach at Geelong Grammar. The topic will be the most vital component of long-term athletic development, LTAD. Welcome, Tom. Thanks for jumping on, mate. Hold on. Have I not put you on mute? I thought oh, no. Can you hear me? Maybe if you go to settings, it might be not connected. Potentially your audio. I think I can hear you now. Oh, no. If you scroll at the bottom of the screen, Tom, on the right side, the settings there, and then the audio might be selected on a different input. Any luck? No. So you're not on mute for my end, so it's. Yeah, for sure. Audio connection. Because it wouldn't be Bluetooth, because you've got doesn't look like they're Bluetooth headphones. They're connected into the computer. Maybe try taking the headphones out and see.
You got me?
Yeah, we'll just go with that. Awesome.
No worries. I wouldn't want to come this far then.
Yeah,
Get out there.
You've been patient, mate. Thank you so much for jumping on.
No worries.
Let's dive straight in. How's the boarding component shape your training philosophy?
So, like a little bit of background is, so we have, I'm at Geelong Grammar School. We've got 600 boarders here who, you know, this is their home, this is where they live. So our students can come in the mornings before school, so 6:30 through 7:30, lunchtimes, and then after school 3:30 through 6. So the majority of our students, they're choosing to come and train. It's not part of a structured program. It's part of their downtime. Like it's a very structured environment when you've got 600 students living together. It has to be. And then the gym is a place where they can come and have a bit of their own time, a bit of autonomy, and a bit of, it's one of the few choices that they have to be able to come and train with us. And then it just shapes about how we go with our programming and the environment we try and create.
And what's their access like with the gym for those that aren't aware of the program there?
So it must be supervised. So there must be either myself or another coach on duty for students to use it, and that's just a safety thing. But yeah, so every morning, every lunchtime, after school, and a couple of select times over the weekend. And
they have access to that, just like someone listening might have an access to a Fitness First membership. It's their gym to use as they please.
Yeah. So this is their home. They live here. This is their. They play sport here. They eat here, and the gym is. We have a pool facility as well, but it's just another way that we can, basically keep students busy. Because again, if they're not busy, then that's when problems probably arise.
Yeah, for sure. And your training philosophy, mate, what's the difference between training poorly for little result and training poorly potentially resulting in injury?
Yeah, I think the fact that I think why we're all in this business is because we got passionate about training, and somewhere along the line we really developed a passion to train and understand how to train and to learn about it. And I reckon that's the key to long-term athlete development is the long-term component. So what we really like to do, and we try and promote within our facility, is that students come back. So I sort of often use the analogy, I don't mind if people come in and do 45 minutes of bicep curls, because at least they're coming in. And then that'll allow me to build a relationship. And then by that second, third, fourth week of them coming in, then I've had a chance to build a relationship, try and push a different way of training forward for them. And then we gradually get them, especially doing lowers. The lower body is the one we really try and push the most. But then it's they've got skin in the game because it's they're choosing to do the program they want to do. But if they're not coming back, if I go too hard with my theories or with my thoughts on what they should be doing, and they don't come back, then I can't shape them, or I can't put my passion for training onto them.
Yeah, and that's a good segue for the next one, mate. When you're evolving that, developing that relationship, and potentially they are not training the way that you would like for their sport or for their general well-being, whatever the focus is of their training. What are some key areas that you change with the student mindset when it comes to in relation to their programming?
Well, we can we just try and outline results, and it only takes you to really impact on one or two students, and they'll tell their mates, and then they'll tell their mates, and then they'll come and ask you questions. So I think if your students are asking you questions and they value your input and they value your response, because there's a lot of information available and there's a lot of programs that are out there. So what I'm trying to do is, again, build that relationship, let them know that I've got their interests at heart, and that hopefully that the advice I'm giving them makes them better. Because if my advice makes them better, then they'll come back and ask me another question. And as long as I'm giving them answers that I think will make them better, then generally that's they'll keep asking questions and take that on board.
And for strength and conditioning coaches working in the school setting, what are some common mistakes that you've seen potentially in early days while you're getting more experience in the environment?
I think you've got to have your theory and understand that at its true heart, like for high school S&C, it's a pretty basic formula of your strength training. We're just trying to give them a pretty, like those underlying principles of strength. So, for instance, I just like them to be able to squat, hinge, single leg, like some form of a vertical power coordination in there, like a dumbbell snatch. But you don't need to reinvent things. I think the younger you are, the more fancy you try and make your programming. But if somebody wants to squat, front squat, goblet squat, deadlift, trap bar deadlift, it's the true heart of it is it's still a lower body, double leg sort of compound leg strength movement. But safety is the key aspect. If they're doing it safely, I sort of give them a fair rein to have the choice of how they want to get the outcome that ideally I want to shape them towards.
And you mentioned the boarders, they have a good amount of access and to be able to use the gym quite frequently throughout the week. What's the program look like for the other year levels in terms of gym access and education as well, I guess?
So an example today is we had, at the moment, we're getting our sort of year 6, 7, 8 students are coming through the gym as part of their PE curriculum. And that's more about just making them feel welcome and making them feel that it's a place they can use. And obviously letting them know that it's a place to train. It's not a place to come have fun. But there we really try and show them the fundamentals of just training, enjoying it, and feeling comfortable in the environment. So today we just took a class through how to do sets and reps and some pin-loaded machines, and they all enjoyed it. And then a few came back during lunchtime as part of their own their free time.
It seems from the students in high school setting now that are doing PE, it's changed a fair bit. Physical education now into a little bit of drip feeding in some strength and conditioning principles, sports science. Are you finding students that are passionate in that area are interested in learning from yourself as a coach? Like, are you seeing young coaches potentially in the program?
Yeah, we do, and hopefully that just comes back to them being passionate about training. And again, I think we've all people who are listening to this, or people who are coaches, they somewhere along the line they just love that training component. They love learning, and that's a great. It's a great opportunity when you can have discussions with students, or they're young adults pretty much, have discussions with them about training, because they're seeing so much information on social media on how others are training, and I'm still learning from the students who come in, and they're manufacturing ways of training or using equipment that we don't have, but they've seen it somewhere on Instagram or again social media, and they're still informing me, and we can have that sort of back and forth discussions.
And how important is that approach, that the fact that, like you mentioned there, that you're learning from them and there is a two-way conversation, do you think, in terms of that relationship side of things?
Yeah, and I think it is, because they're like, I'm showing interest in them. Again, I think if a student feels that you've got their best interests at heart, now they don't always agree with what I'm saying, and that's okay. But I want them to have the confidence in their own programming to take on board from what my experience has shown. But also they're still enlightening me on new ways of their training. But I think once we have those discussions and I can put my theories forward, I generally find that the students come around to my way of thinking, and we end up on the same sort of page.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, well, thank you so much for jumping on and sticking with us to the end, Tom, and sharing with us the philosophy, both of the boarders at Geelong Grammar, and really encouraging them to keep coming back and learning and honing their craft, whether it be from an athletic point of view or as potential future strength and conditioning coaches. For those that want to get in contact with yourself, mate, where's the best place to connect?
Pretty much just via email. If you can get my email, we can put it on here. I'm not, I don't have a real big social media handle, but I check LinkedIn occasionally and email, but always happy to have a chat over a phone call. So, okay,
easy. We'll add the email in the show notes, guys. Well, that's a wrap for the event tonight. I'll change the setting a little bit so probably this one's a good one, and then I'll mute everyone. Open floor. Is there anything that has been missed in this segment that anyone wants to open up before we wrap it up?
So I'll have a quick one for Nathan and Jared from a GPS point of view. It's great stuff that you're seeing. It's really good that we can get the students can see how GPS does affect conditioning and training and how you prescribe your sessions. But how do you find that goes in with students going out their sessions and doing basketball after school, or then going and playing another game of footy, and does it impact on what the coaches want to achieve in their limited time frame?
Yeah, I can probably answer it a little bit. I suppose with football, I suppose we get a lot of boys who train outside of the school, who they're the players. They're playing Premier League football outside. Generally, if they're doing that, we know already, and we usually tailor their training so that we basically don't push them to be heavily involved in our sessions at all. And if not involved at all, maybe just be there for the warm up or seeing physio and just showing their face and actually being there is probably sometimes their only commitment. So we're pretty conscious of not overloading them outside of because they will 100% they'll go and train at their club and probably do more outside. I think it's definitely something we're always concerned about, and I think the same. I think Dave mentioned as well about kids playing other sports as well. Like there's so many. The better kids are usually playing 2 or 3 sports and training 4 or 5 times a week outside of it, and it's just trying to really manage them best and make sure their loads are not out of the too high. I think we can. Yeah, I'm not sure if GPS really plays a huge role, I suppose, in those guys, because a lot of the time they might not take part in our sessions in training. They do in games, but yeah, I think that's. I don't know. Does that answer it? Your question? Yeah,
it's a tough one, isn't it? Because you're trying to monitor loads of young students without real autonomy over their program. So yeah, it makes it tough fun, but it's a great educational tool for those students as well.
Yeah, definitely. We found on that. I think someone mentioned it before, but posting the results of GPS sessions initially, like we do that after every training, every game, and it made a massive difference to our boys buying in and really just getting interested in it all and competing with each other. And I think it was super important to do that. And yeah, some groups probably respond to it better than others as well. And you'll have sometimes a year group that aren't that engaged, but some year groups are. It ebbs and flows a little bit, but it's definitely a really important thing to do.
Well, I'll throw one out there. What would be the challenge of? I imagine losing units would be the biggest challenge. But would you trust kids maybe year 10 and above, where they take their unit with them and they do their running loads, and they bring it back and you download and you truly are getting their weekly exposure, or do you think it would be too high risk?
It's something we have talked about with guys like that, but we haven't done it. We decided not to. I think there was a few reasons why. One of them was that actually not bringing it back. It's probably wasn't prepared to lose a $4,000 unit for a kid, and I don't know. I can't remember what else it was. It was also like this. Sometimes the kids actually have a unit that they're wearing already at their training outside as well, so they can't really wear two. There's a couple other things as well, but in the end we decided not to do it.
Yeah, I guess that's the challenge, isn't it? Like you said, the best kids are playing state and NAB league and school and potentially club level as well, and then other sports, house sports, and it's like a challenging one.
We had some really interesting load issues this year because they have in soccer up here they have their GPS or the association sort of selection trials at the start of the season. So you basically do your pre-season comp and games and everything, and then they have their GPS selection right at the start of the season, and it's like then they play games as well against other association schools like the CAS and IAS, and they basically play like a 2 or 3 day. So I think it's 2 day. And they play about 240 minutes worth of football in 2 days on a Monday, Tuesday after playing on a Saturday. And some of these kids are also playing Sunday as well in their Premier League clubs. And we had a massive spike in injuries. We had 3 guys representing the school, or 4, and they all came back with injuries and it pretty much either held them all the way through the season and rid of them, or one kid's ended up out for the whole year. He had a grade 3 hamstring tear, and he was a captain of the GPS and basically ruled out, gone. So it was pretty bad, really bad the way they organised that. And I don't know, they don't have anyone involved. They don't use GPS at all to monitor it, training. They don't have a physio. It's really just, I don't know. It'd be good to be able to use them to help in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. Is there any final comments or anything that anyone wants to share? But I think we're ready to probably early risers on tipping with this group. So we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much, guys, for jumping on and sharing with us your time and experiences. I thoroughly appreciate it. And, love everything that you guys are doing. You can tell you're super passionate about your role with these kids. So the parents, the schools, should be very grateful and lucky to have you all doing what you're doing. So the Aussie system, it's in good hands.
Thanks very much, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
Cheers, well done, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. Our next episode is with Samantha McLeod, the sports psychologist of the Richmond Football Club. That's tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. So that was Friday, the 5th of August. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.